the Madman.
Ready, aim, custom Hearthstone cards of the week. Starting with Ready, Aim, Fire. This week's custom Hearthstone cards feature strange combinations for dual class cards. And you know what? I'm not gonna rate those any negative in design because someday those could happen. Ready, Aim, Fire is a dual class card for Mage and Hunter. 3 mana, deal 3 damage if your deck has no minions, summon a 3/2 fire elemental with Rush. Design 4 stars, balance 5 stars. I think this is a great card and a good dual class combination. Both of these classes have in the past had no minion themes, so makes sense that they would be paired together with this kind of restriction. The one small problem point that I'm docking a point off the design for is a fire elemental is a little bit out of place in a hunter. Perhaps you have some sort of fire beast instead, like a fire hawk or a fire hound. Hunters have some bit of arcane, so maybe an arcane elemental or something, or arcane energy. This is kind of like a restless mummy for 3 mana, but it does require your deck to have no minions. I think it's a decent payoff card when your deck has no minions. There's currently a no minion mage deck, but it's not very good, so you could easily put in a little bit more support for it. Next up, we have a Soul Giant. You have the classic Warlock and Demon Hunter pairing. 11 mana, 8/8, costs 1 less for each soul fragment you've shuffled into your deck this game. Design 2 stars, balance 4 stars. I think design's a bit boring. Blizzard's soul fragment designed cards were actually quite a bit more interesting than just a simple giant where, oh, hey, you put soul fragments in your deck, your soul giant costs less. There's also another problem with this, which is when you discover this card by discovering a minion in Warlock or Demon Hunter, this choice is just absolutely unusable when you are not playing a soul fragment deck. And that probably shouldn't happen. That's an easy fix though. You could just make it a 10 mana 8/8. And I think that this card may be a little bit on the weaker side, maybe a little too weak at 11, so you could lower it to 10. But again, you have like a too many payoff cards problem. Maybe one more would be overdoing it. Next up, there's a series of 3 Paladin cards, which all have to do with Librams this week. Bookmaster Bei Chao. 5 mana 5/6 Paladin card with Spell Burst. If the spell was a Libram, silence all enemy minions. Design 2 stars, balance 5 stars. The main problem, which is going to be a recurring theme among these next 3 cards, is that it's a really specific card that addresses exactly Librams. It's a card that's particularly printed for a deck that was out last set. I did much prefer the way that the Hearthstone team did it, where they printed cards that didn't directly address Librams, but just happened to go well with Librams, or just cards that were overall good. This card would just see play in a Paladin Libram deck right now, but it has no relevance outside of that. It's just a 5 mana 5/6 then. It's too niche of a card, so to say. There's a little bit of design incongruity of putting silence into Paladin, but I'll make an exception on this one because Bei Chao is a well-known librarian figure. Librarians have to do with books, and books are Librams, and she commonly and famously in the adventure silenced everyone, but she was mostly a priest. So I think eventually Bei Chao will probably be a priest card. Next up, you have High Recorder Handar, 2 mana 1/5 Paladin legendary. Battle cry for the rest of the game, your blessings are Librams. Design 2 stars, balance 3 stars. Very similar to Bei Chao, except actually even worse in that it's even more niche than Bei Chao, because this one, not only do you have to address Librams, you also have to address blessings. Now, what are popular blessings that you might include in your deck? Well, the ones that come to mind are Kings and Authority. So Blessing of Kings and Blessing of Authority are both kind of maybe in pure Paladin with the Librams. King's not really right now, but if you put in High Recorder Handar, you probably would put in Kings. You probably wouldn't put in the others still, because the main problem with this card is it's really inconsistent. It's a legendary that affects your blessings if you happen to draw Handar early enough to have that make into effect. And having a card like with this big an impact on the rules of the game, on one specific card, on one legendary, in a deck that you would probably build your deck around, this is folly. It's like, oh, hey, I drew it early. Now my Blessing of Kings and Blessing of Authority get -3 mana. Woo! Or, oh, I didn't draw it. That means my Blessing of Kings is significantly worse. Too swingy. Also, it's a 2 mana 1/5, which is a bit much. Final Libram related card. It's Libram of Cthulhu. A 2 mana dual class Druid and Paladin. Give a minion and your Cthulhu +2/+2 wherever it is as classic. Design 1 star. Balance 4 stars? This is like the worst card I've seen in a custom Hearthstone design for a while. Imagine trying to make Cthulhu relevant in 2020, but further than that, it's like, what a weird mashup of classes. It's Druid and Paladin. Druid brings the Cthulhu buffing, Paladin brings the Libram, but Paladin would never run Cthulhu decks because they don't have any specific Cthulhu buffers. So I guess they would put in a Libram Paladin deck to try to buff their Cthulhu? What? And then Druid would just have this as a 2 mana +2/+2 spell, which gives your Cthulhu +2/+2, which is super boring. And, you know, Cthulhu decks are not going to work in 2020. People actually just like Cthulhu for some reason, which might be a signal to maybe have Cthulhu come back later. Next up, we have a interesting dual class mashup between 2 unlikely classes, Warrior and Mage. Dual class card. Warrior is red, Mage is blue, gains 6 armor, it has spell damage +2. Ha 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 ha. Anyways, 3 mana. Design 4 stars, balance 5 stars. Interesting, there's no way that this title ever stays the same. There's problems in translation. Of course, the clever part is that this is a poem. But I actually think that this is an interesting design. The concept of the spell is you play the card, you gain 6 armor, 6 special armor. While you have that armor gives you spell damage +2. In some ways, this is similar to a 3 mana 0/6 that has spell damage +2, which I think is fine. I think it's a little bit better than that because, you know, the armor applies to you directly, and it can be more difficult to reduce 6 armor than it is to kill a 0/6. Obviously, that armor is removed first if you also have other armor. As clever as this is for English localization, a card with the title of Warrior is red, Mage is blue is just not going to work out though. But I think it's an interesting design space that could be explored. A piece of armor that comes with extra spell damage. Maybe consider making it only Mage only. And also, while Warrior Mage is one of the weirdest pairings you could come up with, I could see a set in the future with weird dual class pairings. Crucible of Infinity. It's a warrior weapon legendary, which is 10 mana. Death Rattle, equip a random weapon and give it this Death Rattle. And this is a 10 mana 6/1. Design 3 stars, balance 1 star. The main problem with this card is that it's too slow, and also the variance is too high, which is why I hit the design. You could get something like Light's Justice, and then you're forced to just swing your weapon 4 times until you get a new weapon. It's a pretty weak sauce, and by forced, you could equip a new weapon and then kill your weapon, and then your Crucible of Infinity overwrites your weapon. That's kind of silly too. You can't really play very many weapons alongside your Crucible of Infinity. When you compare this with Gorehowl, it's just distinctly overcosted by quite a lot. Maybe it should cost around what Gorehowl costs at 7. It's an interesting idea, but it's just too widely variable. Hermsey's Boots. 3 mana, Warrior Paladin dual class card. Draw a minion, give it Divine Shield and Rush. Design 5 stars, balance 4 stars. This is kind of like Call to Adventure. So instead of drawing your lowest, and instead of +2/+2, it's Divine Shield and Rush. And I think Divine Shield and Rush could be comparable to +2/+2. Though, it doesn't draw the lowest. In fact, you don't want to draw the lowest here. The card is interesting in that I think it's actually fairly well balanced. It's on that weird ledge where 3 mana is too weak, but 2 mana is pushing the card. And I'd rather see cards get pushed than be too weak. So I decided it should probably be 2 mana. This is kind of like Tiamat's Effect, which is a 7 mana Divine Shield Rush if you choose the most common option, 6/6. So if you draw a 4 mana 6/6 with Hermsey's Boots, then you basically created Tiamat. Hermsey's Boots has a lot of variance to it too, like you could end up drawing a low-cost card unless you designed your deck to not have those. So based on that restriction, perhaps Hermsey's Boots can in fact cost 2. In short, fascinating card, I actually quite like it. Karma, the Enlightened one, 4 mana dual class for Shaman and Mage, 4 mana 4/3 Battle Cry, choose a mantra, it empowers your next spell. Spell Burst, choose a mantra. Another mantra. Your mantra options are your next spell has lifesteal, your next spell has +2 spell damage, and your next spell is reduced in cost by 2. Design 2 stars, balance 1 star. I'm not necessarily docking any points from design for, of course you wouldn't have a League of Legends character in Hearthstone, but this designer just decided that, hey, I want to simulate all of the League of Legends cards as if they were Hearthstone cards. And, that's kind of cool. In fact, that's actually a Runeterra. That's a new card game. They did that! Anyways, what I have a problem with in terms of design is giving mage spells lifesteal. Mage has a distinct weakness, and they should have a weakness. Their weakness is that they can't regain health. But when your next spell has lifesteal, that's a big deal for your Flame Strike when you suddenly gain 16 off of a Flame Strike. There's also another problem with design, which is your next spell has. How do you remember that your next spell has lifesteal or your next spell has +2 spell damage? All of the cards where your next spell has either happen immediately or they come with a mana reduction. Then you remember that because your next spell actually actively costs less. Giving a blank check on what your next spell does for the entirety of the game, there's actually a problem with that. The balance is too powerful right now because you simply just make your next spell cost 2 less, you cast a spell, you get the 2 reduction, you make your next spell have lifesteal, and then you just sit on that lifesteal for a while until you Flame Strike the opponent. Or, you do your big AoE spell, and then suddenly you generate so much health, it's ridiculous. There are 2 potential fixes to this card. First fix, maybe make it Druid Shaman, because then you don't have the lifesteal go into the mage area. Druid Shaman can actually share lifesteal and spell damage and mana reduction on spells. Although this is it's clearly a really shaman focused card. Secondly, instead of empowers your next spell, blank check for the rest of the game, maybe it empowers your next spell this turn. There's also a little bit too much going on here with a card having both Battlecry and Spell Burst. While I enjoy fitting multiple mechanics onto a card, this might just be too much. Perhaps it should simply be Spell Burst. Do something. And finally, let's go to the trump card of the week. This card I love the flavor of, and I had wished actually that Warrior got more bully cards in Skullomance. How about more bullies in Lunch Money Bully? Well, Warrior 3 mana 3/2, Battlecry, deal 2 damage to a minion. If it survives, add a coin to your hand. A very evocative imagery of a bully shaking down someone for their lunch money. Design 5 stars, balance 4 stars. It's kind of like a slam, except it comes with a 3/2, and instead of giving you a card, it gives you a coin. I find that a little too powerful. My balance suggestion is to make it a 3 mana 2/2, as is probably sees play in every single warrior deck, too powerful. But bullies are awesome in a video game. I love the flavor of the card, which is why this is the trump card of the week. Fits so well with the class, fits so well with the fact that Lunch Money Bullies should be in Skullomance. I'll also mention that a lot of people think that this could be a Warrior Rogue dual class card because coins are cool in Rogue and it brings the mechanic together, and I agree, it could be that. These cards were designed around the time where all the Skullomance cards were finished getting revealed. Looking forward to reviewing the cards where the Skullomance cards are all out and maybe they've seen a bit more play. We can see a bit more of accurate designs, but cool to see the rough nuggets that are happening, while designers had to think, oh, wow, new set, what can I fit in from the new set here?